On the morning of September 7th, 2025, the White House lawn became the backdrop for another moment in the evolving narrative of US foreign policy. As President Donald Trump walked toward Marine One, reporters shouted questions over the roar of helicopter blades trying to extract clarity on the administration's response to Russia's latest move, the largest aerial barrage against Ukraine since the war began. Just hours earlier, Russia had launched a coordinated wave of missile and drone strikes across Ukraine, targeting critical infrastructure and residential zones in Kyiv, Odessa and Kharkiv. Ukrainian officials described it as the largest single-day aerial attack in the ongoing war, a tactic designed to break Ukrainian resistance before the harsh winter sets in. International condemnation followed swiftly, but so far, official US response had been limited until this moment. When a reporter asked President Trump whether he was prepared to move into the second phase of sanctions against Russia, his reply was succinct: "Yeah, I am." A three-word answer, brief, almost flippant, but one with potentially far-reaching consequences. No elaboration followed. The president boarded the helicopter and departed, leaving behind a statement that raised more questions than it answered. Was this a shift in US posture toward Moscow? Were new sanctions imminent? And if so, how far would they go? This wasn't the first time President Trump had spoken off the cuff about sensitive global matters. His style, direct, often unscripted, has long distinguished him from his predecessors, but it's also left allies, analysts, and even members of his own party scrambling to interpret intent behind brevity. Sources within the administration suggest that the second phase of sanctions could involve targeting Russian financial intermediaries, oil revenues, and export pipelines used to fund the war. Others indicate that sanctions might extend into cyber technology and dual-use drone components, particularly those smuggled through third-party nations. In recent months, US sanctions have slowed, partially due to political gridlock and concerns over economic blowback. European allies, too, have struggled to maintain unity on harsh measures amid rising energy prices. But with Russia's latest escalation, the global appetite for coordinated punitive action appears to be growing again. Still, President Trump's message didn't end with foreign policy. In a sharp pivot, another reporter asked about rumors that the administration was preparing to use the Department of Defense to address crime in major US cities, specifically Chicago. His response was characteristically blunt. "When you say that, darling, that's fake news," he said, brushing off the question with both dismissal and irritation. As the reporter pressed, Trump cut in. "Listen, be quiet, listen. You don't listen. You never listen. That's why you're second rate." He continued, "We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense." In a matter of seconds, the president had reframed a sensitive question about federal military deployment into a discussion about urban crime, touching a political nerve that has long divided American voters. For supporters, the message resonated, restoring order and addressing violence in American cities. For critics, it raised concerns about federal overreach, militarization of law enforcement, and the potential erosion of civil liberties. Then came an unexpected shift. Another reporter asked about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a candidate who has positioned himself as a political outsider, challenging both Republican and Democratic establishments. Trump responded with what could best be described as cautious admiration. "He's a different kind of guy," the president said. "He has a lot of good ideas, but he's got a lot of ideas." Then, as he often does, Trump took the conversation in an unusual direction, linking Kennedy's ideas to public health and specifically to autism. "Normally, they don't have any ideas, and that's why we have problems with autism and so many other things," he said. "We're coming up with the answers for autism, you watch. We're coming up with the answers for other things that normal people, regular people, easy to get along with people wouldn't be able to do." Trump's comments, while vague and controversial, highlight a familiar strategy: align with anti-establishment figures to siphon their audience, then redirect the message toward his own political vision. This tactic, part populism, part opportunism, has helped Trump maintain support among disillusioned voters, even as he faces mounting legal challenges and growing scrutiny on the global stage. Returning to the matter of Russia, analysts say the president's brief statement, "Yeah, I am," may be more than a soundbite. In diplomatic circles, it signaled a willingness to harden the US posture, just as Russia shows signs of escalation. Yet the lack of detail also opens the door to ambiguity, and ambiguity in foreign policy can be both a strength and a risk. International markets reacted cautiously. Oil prices edged higher on fears of sanctions affecting Russian exports. The ruble fell slightly against the dollar. NATO members held emergency calls with US defense officials. And in Kyiv, Ukrainian leaders publicly welcomed Trump's stance, urging Washington to move quickly and decisively. But while Trump hinted at sanctions, the actual policy mechanisms are still under development. A source familiar with the National Security Council's planning told AFP that several options are being reviewed, ranging from energy embargo extensions to direct sanctions on Russian political figures. On Capitol Hill, reaction was mixed. Some Republicans praised Trump's readiness to respond, while several Democrats called for more than words. A single sentence isn't a policy, said Senator Claire McDowell, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. We need a comprehensive plan, not improvisation. Meanwhile, international human rights organizations have reported an uptick in civilian casualties in Ukraine following the Russian strikes, further intensifying calls for US action. The United Nations has scheduled a special session on the crisis, with American delegates expected to push for expanded international sanctions and humanitarian aid. Back in Washington, however, attention remains divided. The administration continues to juggle competing priorities: foreign conflict, domestic unrest, political challenges, and an election cycle already gaining momentum. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s insurgent campaign continues to draw media attention, especially among voters seeking an alternative to the two-party system. Trump's acknowledgement of Kennedy suggests an awareness of that political undercurrent and a readiness to harness it if needed. This confluence of events, escalating war abroad, tensions at home, and a fragmented political environment underscores the complexity of presidential messaging. In today's media environment, even a single comment outside the White House can reverberate across borders and markets within minutes. What remains to be seen is whether Trump's words will be followed by concrete actions, and whether those actions will stabilize the situation in Ukraine or provoke further escalation. For now, the world watches, waits, and listens. As Marine One lifted off that morning, the image was almost cinematic. The president silhouetted against the rising sun aboard the helicopter en route to the US Open. Behind him, a capital city grappling with crises both global and domestic. Ahead, a world uncertain of America's next move. But if history has taught us anything, it's that in moments like these, words matter, even when there are just three of them.
Are you ready to move to the second phase of sanctions against Russia or punishing Putin?
How was your call with the Prime Minister?
That's fake news. When you say that, darling, that's fake news.
Well, why would you use the Department of Defense?
Listen, be quiet. Listen. You don't listen. You never listen. That's why you're second rate. We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
How was your
Are you ready?
What do you think of all the establishment attacks on RFK Jr.?
Well, he's a different kind of a guy. He's got a lot of good ideas, but he's got a lot of ideas. You know, normally they don't have any ideas, and that's why we have problems with autism and so many other things, because we're coming up with the answers for autism. You watch. We're coming up with the answers for other things that normal people, regular people, easy to get along with people wouldn't be able to do. He's got a lot of ideas, and so do I, and we're going to clean it up.